make a completely different video this week about robots, Arduino, solar panels, but weather doesn't really want to cooperate with me. So it's a good moment to play with Dremel CNC a little bit and make some projects, because you know, once I will have the IndyMill in my workshop, there will be really no point in using the Dremel CNC. Don't get me wrong, this is still a great CNC machine, but when you have, you know, such big metal CNC machine, why would you use a Dremel CNC? This video is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning community where you can learn pretty much anything you want, and first 1000 people that will click the link in the description will get 2 free months of Skillshare. I will show you 4 quite simple projects that you can make with Dremel CNC. Some of those projects are actually just things that you can machine on Dremel CNC, but hopefully, you know, showing you the process of setting that up in Fusion360, preparing the stuff for milling, I mean the material, actually milling of course, and some post-processing. Maybe it will give you a better understanding of how it works, how you can use it, or maybe you will get some ideas for your own projects, because why not? First thing that I'm going to show you is a coaster made out of MDF. MDF is super simple to machine. It is also easy to set that up in Fusion360, I mean the coaster, because it is extremely simple part. You just need 2 different paths for milling, 1 milling bit and a piece of MDF, and that's seriously it. MDF is easy to machine, but you should always wear a mask because it's not really healthy to breathe all that in. So always wear a mask. And now let's jump to Fusion360 to show you how I set up everything. Here we are in the Manufacture tab of Fusion360, and here is my very simple coaster. As you can see, we have just 2 operations for a CNC machine, and that's 2D pocket and 2D contour cut. You can find both of those operations right there. Here is the pocket and here is the contour. So let's take a look at the pocket firstly. Here I have proper feed rates already prepared with proper milling bit, as you can see. You can just take a closer look at these things. In the geometry I have silhouette chosen right there. It's very important. For simple things it works great. For something more complicated you have to go with selection and select it on your own. Then we can go to passes, and here is a very important setting. That's maximum roughing step down, and that's basically the depth of cut for every single layer. So I decided to go with 3 mm, and for MDF or wood it works great. And that's it when it comes to the pocket cut. When it comes to the contour cut, it's basically the same thing. Of course feed rates are slightly modified, same milling bit. When it comes to the geometry, you have to choose the bottom part of the object that you want to machine, and don't forget to turn on the tabs right here. When it comes to passes, you have to select multiple depths, and I set it to 2.5 mm, and that's again just the depth of cut. So that's what you have to do right there. And after that click OK, and it is ready for machining. All we have to do right now, we can take a look at the simulation firstly, but you have to select the wool setup and then click simulate. And after turning on the stock material, you can see the wool simulation. And once you are sure that everything is fine with the machining, we can go with post-process, choose GRBL right there, and click OK to export your G-code. As I told you, it is extremely easy. So to machine this thing, I will use 4 flute 3.175 mm or 1/8 of an inch milling bit. That also works with Dremel, but of course I will use 500 watt spindle that I already have installed on my Dremel CNC. Before placing a material on the bed of your CNC, you actually have to mark the center of it, because we also mark that in Fusion360, and this is our reference point, and machine will use this point as point 0, 0, 0 on the XYZ axis. So this is very important, and you have to quite precisely adjust your CNC to this point. You have to move the X, Y and Z axis exactly to this cross, and then you can start machining. Milling that, you know, it is super easy. Just attach it with few screws to the machine, your Dremel CNC or whatever CNC that you are using, and open CNC.js, import your G-code that you exported from Fusion360 and hit start, and that's it. Milling MDF is usually quite enjoyable. There is really not a lot that can happen. It usually goes pretty smoothly and the results are quite fine. I mean, right here you can see that the result is okay when it comes to the contour cut, but the inside, it usually looks like this because it's MDF. But I'm really happy with my coaster and my initials in the coaster. It's really not that great when it comes to this surface finish inside, but on the outside it looks great. If you would like to get the F3D file, that means the file from Fusion360 with everything set up, with manufacturer tab that is already filled with all of the paths and everything, you can find that on my Patreon. Second thing that I want to make is actually something that I already made before, and that's the lamp that I designed a long time ago. I made a video about it, but I didn't post it on YouTube. It's a really cool lamp. I really love this design. It's super minimalistic, simple, made out of recycled wood because the wood that I used to make it is actually old pallet wood. It's pine. It's made out of 5 pieces of wood that are machined on a CNC machine, one 3D printed shade, you know, cable with a light bulb and just literally 2 screws. And that's it. I'm really proud of this lamp because it is so minimalistic, simple, but at the same time works so well. So before we'll get to milling, let's jump to Fusion360 and I will show you how I set that up. Let's take a look at the lamp, and here is the wall assembly with all of the parts already in place. But if you want to machine something like this, you have to, you know, separate every single object, and as you can see I have everything right there already prepared for milling, but I'm going to mill just the legs, 2 of the legs for this lamp. And even though the part is slightly more complicated, we just have 2 operations, the contour cut and pocket milling. Pocket milling is basically the same. I went with this selection and I selected all of the green lines that you can see, that is those lines right there, here and on the bottom. And just with this I'm able to machine this wool pocket with this hole inside without any problems. And again, just 3mm for the maximum roughing step down. And now let's take a look at the contour, because here is something different. Those values right here are exactly the same as previously, but here in passes I increase number of finishing passes to 2 and step over to 0.5mm, and thanks to that we can achieve a slightly better surface finish on the contour. As I said, super simple to set up in Fusion360. And I will use the same milling bit that I used for MDF, that's 3.175mm. And for flutes, I use it for any kind of wood, for MDF, for plywood. It works great for this kind of stuff. And when it comes to material, as I said, this is pallet wood, that's pine. You just have to cut, you know, the proper length that you need to machine your stuff. You can easily attach it with screws to the bed of a CNC machine. Machining wood is usually a little bit harder than machining MDF. It's still not really that hard, you can pretty easily do this. The problem is that the structure of the wood is not really as even as MDF. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. It's just a little bit harder because sometimes in some directions CNC machines struggles a lot to machine this part, but you can easily solve this problem by lowering the feed rate. And after machining just a little bit of assembly with a hammer and literally 4 screws, one 3D printed part, light bulb. As I said, I'm super proud of this design of this lamp. It's minimalistic, modern, made out of wood, and it's actually very useful because you can just put it on your desk and study. And if you want to study, you can use Skillshare, and that's a pretty smooth transition to the sponsor message, so let's go. Skillshare is a perfect place for people like you and me, for people that are creative and want to explore new topics. You can find there thousands and thousands of classes on topics like woodworking, filmmaking, business, or even art. Like, do you want to play a ukulele? No problem. Or maybe you want to play a guitar? No problem. Or maybe you want to sketch like an industrial designer? No problem, they have a class on that too. One class that I think is worth checking out is Introduction to Arduino Creating Interactive Projects by Mark Frauenfelder. If you have no experience with Arduino and want to start making your first projects and learn how to use basic components, then this is a perfect class for you. You will understand how breadboard works, how to control a servo or blink an LED. There is just so much more amazing classes on electronics, CAD or web design, just to name a few. And it's only $10 a month, but the cool thing is that first 1000 people that will click the link in the description will get 2 free months of Skillshare, and you can take as many classes as you want for 2 months for free, so definitely check out the link in the description, and thanks a lot to Skillshare for sponsoring. Third thing that I want to show you is actually something that I not only want to show you, but I want to make it for myself because I need something like this in my workshop, and that's drills holder. It's, you know, the same piece of wood basically that I used for machining the lamp. That's pine out of old pallets. I have a lot of this kind of wood right here, and I will just simply, you know, cut the shape and drill a few holes with Dremel CNC, and then I will put all of my drills there and attach it to the wall so that every time that I need, I have, you know, drills really close to me and I can easily get to work with them. That's something that I wanted to make for a long time, and right now it's a good time. I can use Dremel CNC to a good use. Again, let me show you how I set that up in Fusion360 and we'll machine it. And here is the drills holder. It's basically a piece of wood with a lot of holes inside, and for some reason I wasn't able to choose all of the holes at once with one operation, so I have a single operation for every single hole, so there's quite a lot of that, but it's very simple. It's a basic drill operation, and right here I have some milling bit, slightly different feed rates. When it comes to the geometry, of course, this is a single hole that I chose. And when it comes to the cycle, I have 2 mm for incremental depth and step over, and I choose the circular pocket milling with the diameter that is equal to the diameter of the hole that I want to machine. And at the end I have the contour cut with 2 finishing passes just to have this nice surface finish on the outside, and tabs of course for safety. It is pretty easy to set up in Fusion360 as most of these projects, because those are mainly meant for beginners. I'm not really sure why I can't set up all of the holes in this holder at once. If you know, let me know in the comments. Maybe there is, you know, maybe I'm doing something wrong. When it comes to milling bit, I'm going to use the same thing, 4 flutes, 3.175 mm when it comes to the diameter, and same kind of wood as I already told you. This time I'm not going to label the X in the center because there are some holes already in this wood, because that's pallet wood. So I'm going to just label it where I want. I measure that if I will fit the wool part. So when it comes to actual machining, I had to lower this time the feed rate quite significantly to 60, sometimes even 50%, and that's mainly because the contour cut that for some reasons was really hard for the CNC machine. Maybe that's again because of the structure of the wood, but anyway, it worked really fine and it looks great. When it comes to the surface finish, it is amazing. All of the holes were perfect. I just had to, you know, correct them a little bit with a drill, and it looks great. It will work great, hopefully, for my tools. Thing number 4, the project number 4, and the last thing for this video, is actually something made out of aluminum, and that's a stampler, or I'm not sure what's the proper name of that. You can heat it up and label something in, for example, a wood or leather or whatever you want. It works really great. You can machine it easily out of aluminum or brass. And it's just also simple to set up. I already made something like this before, but with different text. This time I'm going to use my initials. So before we'll start milling, let me show you how I set that up in Fusion360. And here is my very simple design of a branding iron with my initials, and I will cut to the proper dimensions a piece of aluminum, so I will have just one operation right there, and that's again to the pocket cut that you can find right here. And when it comes to proper settings, the feed rate is pretty similar to the feed rate that I used for MDF or wood. The milling bit right here is 2 mm single flute milling bit. That's very important to use single flutes milling bits for cutting things like aluminum. When it comes to geometry, I just choose the letters, the trace around the letters and the inside of B. And then in passes I have of course multiple depths selected, and I set it to just 0.2 mm. I know that's a really small number, but that's how you have to work with aluminum on Dremel CNC. And once you have everything properly set it up, the heights, the geometry, all of the feed rates, the milling bit, and of course multiple depths, because that's really important, you can just click OK. You can simulate this thing, And if it looks fine, you can just simply export it with the post process and we can start machining. So this time I'm not going to go with the contour cut because it's really hard to do for the Dremel CNC. Of course it's possible, I already did this a lot of times before, but it's just easier for me this time to cut it with a handsaw and then put it on the Dremel CNC and machine it without the contour cut. So without the contour cut it takes like, I don't know, 20 minutes to machine something like this on the Dremel CNC, so that's really not a lot. And that's great. So after cutting it to the proper dimensions, you can again label the center of the part of the material that I'm going to use, and you can put it on the Dremel CNC, attach it securely with a few screws or maybe even more screws if you have to. So after machining this part, I just drilled a hole in the back and then I connected a rod with a wooden handle, and that way you can, label anything you want. You can heat it up, put some, I don't know, names, text in the wood, whatever you want. It works great and it is super simple to make. And that was the last project number 4 for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope right now you know a little bit more about Fusion360 and how to set up everything for milling on the Dremel CNC or actually any other CNC machine that you want. If you would like to build your own CNC machine, check out my other videos. If you have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments. On Patreon you can find files for projects that I made today, the F3D files where everything is already set up. You can just play around and modify stuff and see how it looks like. Don't forget to check out the link to Skillshare in the description. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Happy making. Bye.